So, hey everyone, happy Friday. We'll officially roll the intro in a bit, but in the meantime, hi Chuck, how's it going, man?
Man, Joel, it's good to see you alive and back on your feet, and on my 48th lap around the sun. This is
Damn.
kind of a gift to myself. Love hooking up, connecting, reconnecting with old friends who are still alive for sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, you don't look a day over 37, so that's good. Yeah, but
Yeah,
happy Chuck Day. That's always you know, it's a good thing to celebrate. I know a lot of people like take youth and everything else for granted, and then especially as stuff starts to grind on, they start to sort of get bummed out and like all their best years are behind them, all that kind of stuff. But it seems like you've really like picked up steam over the years where it's just like, every year is a better year and it should be like that. It's been, other than these last few weeks for me, it's been kind of like that. And
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. It's not a straight line up. There's chop in the trading chart. I'll try and talk over your coughing, so hopefully the audience won't be too annoyed.
nah, it's all right. I'll get it. And yeah, apologies everyone. I'm getting over being sick. I had pneumonia, I had a fucking, I don't know, all kinds of shit for like 2 weeks. The most I've been taken out of actual like work for any kind of illness in like many decades. So yeah, enjoy it while you can, guys. You're not gonna have me this week for a long time, you know. I mean, let's hope. Who knows?
Well, all I can express is gratitude to be here. It's awesome.
Yeah, well, thanks. It's I wouldn't miss the show for the world. The definitely now you've always kind of had a little bit of the leg up on me with the voice, but today especially a little croaky, a little croaky. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, vulnerable moment. I'm always a little. I have trouble with praise generally, and with you, fellow man, complimenting my voice, it's just weird. So, but I try to take it in stride.
yeah, no problem. And I'm of course taking the taking myself down. So it's more self-deprecating than it is.
Self-deprecation, sure. I'll take it. You can have it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, people have talents and gifts, and like, um, it's surprising how like rare, like how many good podcasters or whatever else out there just have like trash voices, like,
Yeah,
and there's nothing
yeah.
you could do about it. Like they sound fine. I'm sure their wife loves them or whatever, but like some weird little nasally like, it's like so.
Well, for the record, it's not like I haven't tried to leverage it. Like, I did college radio for a while, and I think that influenced, I don't know, maybe the late stages of my vocal cord development.
You must have gotten so freaking laid back then. I could just imagine like
I'm pleased to
full
say.
head of hair, Chuck, just buttery on the mic, just like
98.1 KVSE, your radio listening alternative. This is Chuck Williams with the Midnight Groove. Yeah,
damn,
I had a show
damn,
from midnight to 3 a.m.
dude. Yeah, people are getting their tissues out for that one for sure. Yeah, yeah, good stuff. But also, like, I don't understand. Like I kind of do this on the side. I don't
Mhm.
understand how people hack it. Ooh, are performers like actual either full-time podcasters or like performers like theater performers or whatever or
Mhm.
singers or whatever. You have to get up on stage. What happens if you sound like a freaking frog like I did right now? Like, what do you do? How do you? Are there good drugs you take? Like,
I've heard, yeah, they got the mists and the sprays. Those go back hundreds of years, man. For the opera singers, I think, right? They had oils and all kinds of stuff
mhm,
that they would try. I think
yeah,
even whiskey, maybe. I don't know. It's my
baby
intuitive
oil.
thinking. Yeah.
Hmm.
But, well,
That's
I
all
mean,
in the
depends.
news these
Wait a
days.
minute. Yeah. You're pretty good at like sidetracking there, catching
Yeah,
me off guard.
I always tried to derail the freaking conversation. Oh, funny stuff. All right, well, let's roll the intro and actually get the show going before people, we lose people with the baby oil references,
Right.
All right, ready? Three, two, one, go. So, hey everyone, officially. Oh, we scared him away. But anyway, welcome to.
Open over here. I don't want everybody I'm doxing myself with my wardrobe over there.
Damn. People
I
don't
mean,
know that.
I've got the things hanging with all the conferences that I've attended. That's the public life.
Yeah,
I don't want what's in the closet out. So
you don't want that
apologies.
killer weekend fit coming out, or people. You got to catch people off guard. But so, welcome officially to the Digital Cash Rundown, episode 171, with the one and only Chuck Williams, master of disguise, master of the radio voice, etc., whatever else I could say. How's it going, man?
I don't know. It's going good. I mean, generally, I'm enjoying life, doing the best I can with things. I've spent the past 8 months coding anywhere from 4 to 12 hours a day with my business partner Alex on my project Ludum Vitae. I'm hoping to launch an alpha this month and beta before the end of the year, and something big before my MVP in Q1, Q2 next year. So here we are. I'm feeling like this might be the beginning of a kind of a streak of like promotions and appearances and things like that as I make myself more public as CEO of this new founded organization that I'm trying to build. I'm very much encouraged because people have actually like contributed funding to the project. That's not my own, I was
Like, I have to say, and by the way, you froze up for a second there, but it was a good time. I was gonna just say that freaks me out still. Like the idea of other people just giving you money to do stuff. That personally terrifies me. I guess maybe that's why I'm not a founder right now, is because of all that stuff. Because I would just like absolutely lose it if just, hey, I like your idea. Here's a big pot of money that I worked very hard for and all our investors worked hard for. Make it happen. I'm like, oh no. Now, like, what do I do with it? So, yeah, it is definitely a sign of confidence, which is very nice. It's also a sign of terror. So, wouldn't want to be you for right now, Chuck, especially out with your bad connection. Okay, well, while waiting for Chuck's internet to get back, which he did have like fiber landline stuff, which is kind of crazy that like doing your very best for the best connection possible, you still have issues like this. Might as well jump into the Coin ATM radar read. Get this out of the way. We don't really need Chuck for this. So, this podcast is, of course, very proudly sponsored by Coin ATM Radar. When buying crypto with cash, an ATM is much more reliable and safer than meeting some random person in a random place. And unlike an exchange which could freeze your account, you truly own all the crypto you buy. With Coin ATM Radar, you can find crypto ATMs and other services where you can buy or sell cryptocurrencies for cash. On their website, search by coin, address, if the ATM supports selling as well as buying, and you can also search by geo area, such as country, city, and state. You can also check and compare actual current fees at different ATMs. If you want to find out more, head over to coinatmradar.com, which is coinatmradar.com. And as I mentioned, it was very useful to me recently with the trip to Croatia, which is a very kind of cash forward society. And so all my little living on crypto tips and tricks and things like that didn't really work out super well. But thankfully, I was able to find a good ATM there, sell a little bit of crypto for some euros, and excuse me, and make it happen. So there you go. Poor Chuck. This on his wonderful birthday that we invite him on the stream for, has had a little bit of birthday unluck with the quality of his connection. But we could definitely roll right into some of these stories, and I'm sure he'll jump right in. All right, here we go. So, the first thing And obviously, the first thing I wanted to cover, of course, is Ross Ulbricht, right? So Ross posted at the beginning of the week, he says, "Here it is, the start of my 12th year in prison today. I intend to make the most of it and use my time wisely." And then Donald Trump, the former president of the United States, who is mentioned on and off, oh yeah, I'm going to free Ross. He quoted, says, "I will save Ross Ulbricht." All in caps. So it is kind of crazy to see just the level of like there's the crypto pandering, right? Of Trump, etc. Has been pretty, it kind of got here and there and then kind of escalated over time and things like that and blah blah blah. Except more recently, he's really gone heavy in this direction, and it's kind of like one of those big kind of litmus test things. Isn't just, oh yeah, I'll save the crypto, I'll deregulate this, I'll whatever. The big thing is of like the one of us kind of thing is the Free Ross Ulbricht, the Silk Road founder, which I have to say, it's a very spicy take, right? It's not like oh well we'll deregulate this or something. It's not something very benign. This is a person who created a website that allowed people to do all kinds of very illegal things on the website, including, of course, buying and selling drugs and other things. And while I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that, and it did end up, in my opinion, saving a lot of people by taking a lot of this commerce off the direct black markets where you have all kinds of dangers and things like that. It did end up, it is still like very like radical, what I would call radical kind of anarchist. And that's kind of not necessarily what you'd think the Trump administration would stand for. So it is kind of funny to see Trump really double and triple down on this one thing. And it's really like a lot of people, I know a lot of people in the more hardcore crypto anarchist kind of communities have been pretty hesitant to get behind any of these mainstream politicians for, very good reason. They haven't really done well by us for a long time. But I have known some people who have been like, look, this is a chance at actually freeing Ross from prison is worth holding your nose and voting for this crazy guy. And over time, it does seem like the strength of this promise is growing. If you believe any politician at all, especially this one, which, is always a little bit debatable, but it does seem like this is something he's very serious about. And so I think that's kind of very strange that he's doubling down on this so much, but it's definitely, if you got this person elected and this person did free Ross Ulbricht, that would be absolutely massive, I think. A big turn in the tide. And that's kind of an interesting theme I think I've seen of this campaign, which in 2016 or whatever, you had a big upset in the Republican Party. And then in the general election, but it seemed like Trump was more like, didn't know what he's doing, just knew he was like the anti-establishment guy, whatever, just came in, didn't really do too much too different, was very personality driven. And now this time around, it does seem like, first of all, the opposition to him has become much less personality driven. It's but much less, just personal attacks. It's been a lot of like actual severe, like, legal attacks, things like that, things that have really materially impacted him. And more importantly, though, I kind of feel like the people who supported that administration in 2016, that candidacy, I should say, were much more on the, they're much more kind of on the side of what's the right way to put it? Just like, oh, this guy is a wild card. Let's just see what he does. Vote for him, see what he does. No idea what he's going to do. And then it seems like now a sort of coalition of what it were like misfits or whatever. The anti-establishment coalition seems to form behind him, not being like, okay, well, we like what you did last time, let's do more, but more, okay, we understand you are still very much the outsider, but now we want specific things from this. We would like to, all the outsider people are sort of rallying behind this one campaign candidacy. And a big part of that is, of course, like the crypto thing, because there's a lot of people who have a lot of money in crypto, who have a lot of work in crypto, who have done a lot of this kind of stuff. And they've kind of seen the SEC, the other parts of the government, the crackdowns on Samurai Wallet, etc., arrests, all this kind of nasty stuff. And they're just betting on the other horse. Now they're saying, okay, look, we're going to go behind this guy with everything we got because this is our, not because we believe he's this awesome dude, but he's the contrarian candidate, clearly. And we're kind of getting behind it. And it seems like before people were just like, well, let's see what he's going to do. This time it's like, we'll make sure we know what he's going to do. And so with the whole Ross Ulbricht candidacy, the whole Ross Ulbricht pardon idea, it does seem like a lot of people are like, okay, look, let's get what we can out of this. Like, let's push this guy really hard. He does not seem to care. He's got his own few priorities. Once he gets in there, he does not really seem to care what's going to go on to that same extent. But now people seem to be pressing more like, we want something from this, right? We want something real from this. We don't just want you to be a little nicer on the whole crypto stuff, but we want Ross Ulbricht freed. And so I actually believe much more than I did, a few months ago or a year ago, that he would actually, make good on his promises and actually pardon Ross if this was the case. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that turns out. Obviously, I'm not someone who hopes for politics to change anything. At this point, 12 years in prison is a very long time. And that's like, that could be a full sentence, right? Even though there's no prayer that Ross is getting out of prison without something more drastic like a Trump pardon. I think that's what makes it a lot less controversial. If he'd been in there for a year or two, and then you had some major law and order party president or whatever coming in and saying, I'm going to pardon this guy who, a lot of like the FBI agents and stuff say is like a scumbag, even though he's not. I think that then that would be very risky. But at this point, it's just like, it's almost like time served at this point, right? It's just saying like, look, this is an egregious sentence, and it's not so much, even though for us, for what we get out of it, for people who care about Ross, we get Ross free, hopefully. It's not so much like, for us, we get that, but for the rest of the world, it's almost like we get a reasonable 12-year sentence for what he did. And so, I don't know. I mean, I'm going to remain a little hopeful for now. It definitely could be worse. You definitely do not see the other side talking at all about any kind of pardons like this. But as someone who knows Ross Ulbricht's family and the community around him, I don't know. I mean, voting is a very personal decision for people, but some people are viewing it like they don't really vote. It's not their thing. But this is a chance to actually make a real impact in the life of someone that they know and care about. So, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. All right, let's switch on to this next thing. Chuck's entire internet, everything completely died. He's restarting things, so we'll just move on to the next thing. This could just be the hey, get Chuck in, wish him a happy birthday show, and then get him out of here as I solo this thing, which would be kind of funny, but it is what it is. All right, here we go. So this next thing I thought was pretty interesting, which is Tether in the EU. So here we go. So just in, Coinbase to delist USDT and other non-compliant stablecoins in the EU. Coinbase will remove stablecoins that don't meet the EU's new MiCA regulations by December 30th, 2024. So it's kind of interesting because USDC is still there. And we're really starting to see kind of a divergence in the stablecoin market based on, compliance. So Tether has always been, listen, I don't want to talk too much smack, but Tether has always been like a play fast and loose with things kind of approach, where there's been sort of dubious backing. We're going to get into that actually in just a second, but there's been sort of dubious backing behind stablecoin. It's just been more like, well, let's just grow fast, make it useful, get it as many places as possible, follow as few rules as we can, just get it out there, win in the market big. And they definitely have. And especially in the developing world, Tether is, the name of the game. It's really done really well. And at the end of the day, then you had more, I would say, compliant or more slow moving or more explicitly regulated kind of stable coins like USDC is kind of the gold standard there, coming along and kind of providing an alternative that's a little bit more trustworthy according to the market, I guess, and kind of got their lunch eaten by Tether for a little while, for sure, because they had limitations that Tether really didn't have. And yeah, that's now we're starting to see the opposite effects of that. Things are kind of coming around full circle. Hello, Charles. How's it going?
Man, I deeply apologize for that. That's the first time that's ever happened, ever, in 2 years that I've lived here, that
Yeah.
my internet suddenly dies in the middle of doing work after doing coding for 12 hours a day for 8 months. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
I remember that happened when I first moved in to this place. The internet just would like randomly quit on me, and it was very disruptive, and I hated it. And I'd actually get some like wire work done, and get the cables fixed and stuff. But hopefully, you don't have to do any of that.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so sorry about that. Sorry to you and the audience. I don't know what I missed. I apologize
Yeah. Well,
for the loss.
let me quickly flip back to the Ross thing because I did just get done with that.
Oh, really? Man.
Oops. So basically, Ross Ulbricht said, "Here it is. Started my 12th year in prison today. I intend to make the most of it. Use my time wisely." And then Donald Trump's quoted that with all caps, said, "I will save Ross Ulbricht."
Yeah.
So I kind of just like rambled on about how it seems to be a much more clear commitment and promise than like the idle words that have been thrown in the past. Like he seems to be really on this. And what's your take on this?
Yes, I agree. I like clarity. I'm a big fan of clarity. It's one of the methods that I use to choose who I associate with, whether or not they speak clearly and communicate what their intent, around things and aren't opaque and confusing about what they intend to do with not only their time and resources, but perhaps my time and resources. And so, for that, especially in this case, I appreciate Trump's commitment. And with Ross Ulbricht in particular, I wish he were a friend, but as a second best, I consider his mom a friend. Um, his mother stayed with me for probably about a week or so, and she and I spoke at multiple conferences together, and I she said to me once that uh, I reminded her of her son in some ways, in many ways, and that was very touching. Um, right on. And so, my connection to this particular thing, like I've met Ross's sister. I agree. I think Ross's plight is devastating. I think the situation with the FBI, I think there was a lot of framing. I think the judge involved was a mess. I think there's a lot of wrong things about this situation. And, even if you just look at Ross's case in isolation, it's a
Yeah.
stupid case. But then you compare it against many, many other cases of, I mean, look, I'm not a judge. I'm not even a lawyer, but I consider myself to be a human who tries to act as morally as possible. And it just doesn't seem like the judges and lawyers and FBI agents involved were doing that when it comes to Ross, the Silk Road, and the people involved in, let's say, nefarious activities on whatever side of the fence or nebulous position in the web you may find yourself. It's a mess. And Ross doesn't deserve to be spending time in jail for essentially building a website that was meritocratic, free in nature, and a historic artifact of the Bitcoin archives of history that people will be talking about for hundreds of years. You know, the stupidity of all of these people involved are going to be looked at like the Pharisees and Jesus. You know,
Yeah. It's kind of the geopolitics of it are kind of interesting though, because Trump was always the big total boomer, also a law and order kind of thumper, build the wall and all this kind of stuff.
mm-hmm.
Kind of interesting to see, like, of all the people, like, and I have to say, I understand when people don't understand why Ross should be free. Because for a normie perspective, this guy built a website that facilitated wildly illegal things. And like from a not normie perspective, but at the time, like I heard about him in the Silk Road a couple months before it went down. I was just thinking, man, they're gonna get this guy. Like I never thought like my second thought was that is pretty awesome. But my first thought was like, dude's flying close to the sun on this one. This is not gonna end well for him. And so
I
it yeah.
I
Go
agree
ahead.
with that, and I got to jump in here because you use the phrase that I think is appropriately intellectualized so that it sounds true and clever. Facilitated wildly illegal things. Okay,
Yeah.
wait a minute. Roads facilitate
Yeah.
wildly illegal things. Cars, uh, guns, um, you know, I mean, shoes. Um, like, how many things can facilitate wildly illegal things? That's
Yeah, of course. Now
money, cash. Are we going to ban money? Because
now
I mean, that's
the
kind of
caveat on all that is of course the value proposition of the Silk Road was approaching 100% to do illegal activity. And I don't think like it's like the censorship resistant, like the first killer app for crypto was kind of the Silk Road because you could use it to do stuff that wasn't allowed elsewhere. And like there's
I would say to transact in things for which there was a backlog of activity. Not that I'm condoning it. Of course, I don't condone illegal activity, but um, you know, the tyrants of the world are so busy trying to siphon value from every single transaction on this planet that they made it very difficult for humans to just do regular transactions outside of garage sales and trade unions. So, this was like the first opportunity to kind of blow the gasket on a new method of trade that was global in nature, just like the
yeah.
citizens of this planet.
Yeah, absolutely. No disagreements there. I just talk it from the geopolitical standpoint. it's like a very risky move to do. It's not like
Yeah. I'm not
Coinbase.
speaking to you. I'm
Yeah,
speaking to the audience.
it's
I'm
not like
ranting.
Coinbase being like, we're going to sell crypto assets to people, and then the SEC doesn't like it. That's a very vanilla thing. Or
Yeah.
this is hardcore. This is like Amir Taki kind of stuff.
Hmm.
And for Trump to just be like, "Ooh, we're going to free Ross and stuff," I was kind of like going over. It would be a super risky thing to say. I think that part of the reason why it's not so risky is, first of all, he's been in there for 12 years. So even though freeing Ross for us is like a miracle, a godsend, all this kind of great stuff, at the same time, it's not like not being tough on crime. It's like
Yeah.
he's been in there for 12 freaking years. That's
He's
a long
almost
time.
definitely learned his lesson. If there is one to be learned, and probably times 100.
Yeah. And so I guess it's like freeing this dangerous drug kingpin, whatever you want to call him. It's just not as risky because it's been 12 years as opposed to if it was like 2 years. If Trump is like, he's been in there for 2 years, I'm going to free Ross, that'd be very risky. But
Well,
yeah,
one thing that I heard from Ross's mom is that Ross Ulbricht's name, was on the list of people to be pardoned when Trump was going to leave office in his first term. And somebody close to Trump at the last minute before he signed off on these pardons advised him not to pardon Ross Ulbricht. I don't know who that somebody was. There's probably some information out there on who that somebody was, but my bet is that somebody was influenced, perhaps by somebody connected to the judge or the FBI involved. There was some nefarious activity on the side of the government, and an ear close to Trump may have just been all it took to remove Ross's name from his last opportunity to pardon. How long ago was that? 4 years?
yeah. It could be that. It could also just be a political expediency thing where they're like, look, you have a re-election coming up. This is going to be used. This could be used to sink you. It just wait until you get reelected and then do it. It could have been that, but I think it's very interesting how, in the first kind of candidacy for Trump, it seems like he's a complete wild card. People just knew he was something different, and people kind of voted for him largely, I think, on just like the gamble of like, see what happens, see what this guy's all about, see what he does. This time around seems very different because it seems like I don't think he's that different himself a little bit. I think he's much more battle hardened because he's this kind of like machine. He's sort of like flippantly talked about before, the swamp and all this stuff. And then just when he got in there, probably tried to join, unfortunately. Came after him so freaking hard that now it's kind of like, okay, I sort of see things a little bit clearer. But also his support base is very different this time around, I think. You have like all the crypto billionaire type people just being like, look, it's not going to be them. Might as well be you. Like, we want your help with this. And then you have the pro-peace people. Whereas before he's like, he's a little wishy-washy on peace. Now he's much stronger on peace. And his talks on like Ukraine recently were like, look, he says that country's not there anymore. He says it's like it's been blown to crap. Like it's not coming back. Like we should stop the bleeding now. Like he just said any deal would have been better than where we're at today. And like he's become much more strong on that voice. Then of course you have like the RFK camp and then the Tulsi camp and like all these
I
other
was going to
people.
mention that if you weren't going to mention that, because that brings in
Yeah.
more crowds of nutrient dense conscious people and body sovereignty people, which is a pretty significant crowd after the last 4 years of lockdown experience.
Oh yeah. Even though Homeboy kind of did a lot of that stuff, which people I guess conveniently forget. I don't know if they will. But yeah, that's definitely been a new leaf. You got more connection issues. All right. Chuck will let me know if everything works out. There we go. You're still here.
Yeah, I'm coming back. Pardon the blockage. Seems to be coming back up. I don't know what's going on, man. I'm going to make a phone call to my service provider and see what's going on. I also
Are
thought
you mocking me on my birthday? On my birthday.
Well,
Rub it in.
I mean, you put a certain name in the advertisement. I think there's a chance that some, I don't know, maybe some lefty AI agent bots are trying to dox my IP address
Yeah.
because unfortunately I did not use a VPN. So hey,
It is
it
what it
is what
is.
it is.
Well, it's sort of like my last thought on the whole teabag and stuff is I do think it's a much higher actual chance if he were to get in that Ross would get free. So
Yeah.
we'll see. I mean, I'd bet on it.
I think it would be a great thing for many communities. I think that Ross has a a stadium full of people who will cheer his arrival and offer him sanctuary and business opportunities and all the things. He has a lot of dedicated people waiting to have him free, and I want to be one of those people. I
Yeah,
want to
absolutely.
help him out.
And he's a very intelligent guy, and he's seems to have done a lot of good work over the last 12 years as well. So,
Yeah.
you know. All right, let's switch to this Tether thing I barely started on. Here we go. So, just in Coinbase to delist USDT and other non-compliant stablecoins in the EU. So, what's your kind of thought on this whole deal?
Tether's a weird one. Tether is like, it's like this sandstone foundational cornerstone of the crypto market. you know, it's like it's gonna break at some point. We don't know how brittle the interior is. We know that it's not a solid, sound investment, and yet it's so liquid you can't resist touching it in many ways in the crypto market if you want to move expected amounts of coin from one location to another, um,
Yeah.
be it an exchange or whatever. So there's it's got this checkered past and history and involvements with Hong Kong banks and many different kinds of banks and shady audits, and nobody wants to really, like, they got dropped by their auditor. Like, it's just such a mess. And yet, I don't know, like, you can go to the chain and you can see the chain and you can see transactions and you can set up code to watch the chain. And you know um, it's just an interesting, weird thing. And I don't know what is the Tether market at. Is it over? It's way, like, what, 4 billion or something?
Billions,
Yeah,
for sure.
multi-billions.
Well,
And
yeah. You just
I
look at that
remember
real
when it
quick.
when it was in the hundreds of millions, and I was like, wow. I thought Bitcoin would hold all the value, but it
Damn,
seems
is it
like Tether,
really like 120 billion?
right? And it's just the way that that it's
And
been
USDC is 35 billion.
by comparison. And isn't that interesting? And what I think is most interesting about that, the first thing that comes to mind, is USDC is essentially playing by the rules of American banking. USDT is loosely playing by the rules of international banking. That's basically how I couch it. And the rules of international banking are
Yeah.
essentially known to be corrupt. There's the petrodollar, the US dollar, and then there's the euro dollar. And the euro, nobody likes the euro dollar, but the euro dollar is what's going to ruin the US. And I feel like the euro dollar and the petrodollar and USDT are all kind of like eating on the same dead carcass.
Yeah. It's quite poetic. But the thing is, Tether has clearly been the industry first, and they've clearly cut all the corners they could to grow as big as possible.
Yeah.
And they're sort of like, I don't know if too big to fail is the right word, but they're kind of in that sort of a category. They're
Yeah.
huge in the developing world, like
Hmm.
Latin America, Eastern Europe, everywhere. And it seems like USDC, on the other hand, has kind of played the longer game of, like, we're going to be as compliant as possible, and just kind of win out over time. And they're sort of, I don't know if it's like playing slow and steady wins the race, or if it's they're hoping that regulators do the dirty work for them and kill their competitors, and a little bit of both.
Yeah, my suspicion there, that makes me think of the relationship between USDC and Ethereum and a lot of the other tokens and platforms that are like banking friendly that are coming up on the Ethereum platform, and the behind the scenes investments from Coinbase and others into such institutions. I don't know what the involvement was with Solana. I think there may have been some dealings with FTX. um, there's a checkered past in there too, and I feel like that's why Gary Gensler is mixed up in all this, because I feel like he's trying to keep the lid on some nefarious dark activities from institutions like these that claim to be playing by the American banking rules, but behind the scenes are courting lobbyists and setting up funds and pushing value in various places to prop up the next big thing so that they can be the insider that does the Pelosi style trade, as it were.
Yeah. It's also interesting because like PayPal USD dumped a whole billion onto Solana recently. Like these other stablecoin players are kind of getting in big. And it's interesting because Tether was always sort of like, and no one really thought it was decentralized or censorship resistant or anything, but it kind of practically was because it's just like they don't care, do whatever you want, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll
Mm-hmm.
only crack down what we absolutely have to in order to keep the lights on. Everything else is just fast and loose. Whereas,
Well,
yeah,
yeah, go on. Continue.
it I feel like it's kind of like a centralized stablecoin, LARPing as a decentralized stablecoin. The market fit is decentralized, but it is a centralized one. On the other hand, you
Yeah.
have USDC trying being a little bit more, and PYUSD, I would say, being a little bit more in line with like more integrity, if that's the right word, as far as like they are what they are. They're one thing, and I think it's kind of like what I would call those ones are sort of pre CBDCs in that they are well regulated and they can be used as sort of an interim step where it's like, okay, this is like, it's just like digital cash. It's like, bank notes, but you can send them digitally and stuff with some restrictions. It's mostly good. And then there's going to be a crackdown when that becomes basically a CBDC. And so there's that
I
kind of interim step where Tether is kind of in the old school. They're kind of like Binance. They're kind of like grew too fast, did everything, but are in the crosshairs. And Tether will have to come to a fork in the road where they're going to have to decide: are you going to join the pre CBDC crew, or are you and just like clean it all up, or are you going to just remain Tether, get blacklisted from all the Western banking systems kind of thing, and then just live in the Telegram world, as it were, right?
Yeah, that's very interesting. I really like that take. I'm pretty sure I like 98% agree with it. I I hadn't actually considered that aspect of Tether, like just basically going off to die in the wildlands, right? Like they're essentially they become outlaws of the
Or
of the
thrive, become like the bricks chain or whatever,
Yeah, 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 yeah. There'll be like the DMZ that either sink or swim, which in some ways, kind of evokes the meritocratic spirit in me. And you know, if I if I basically say to myself, well, the corrupt banking system is what it is, and everybody's just playing inside of that, whether it's U.S. corrupt banking system or international corrupt banking system. USDC and USDT are trying, I believe, to bridge that gap between banking and crypto. They're trying to
absolutely.
be an on ramp and an off ramp, and I think they saw I
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry about that. Um, I heard most of what you said for the past couple minutes about USDT and their famous. Yes, yes, the audit goalpost moving. That's really and really people have been calling for audits. I would say I first saw them within 8 months of when I had discovered USDT. You know, not long after their inception and launch into the market were they calling for audits. And I remember when they were issuing 10 million and 20 million and 50 million increments and like issuing new tokens here and
Oh
there.
wait, actually, I might have been muted for a little while.
No, I heard you. Unless you
Yeah,
were publicly
that's what I'm
publicly muted.
saying. You heard me, but I wasn't. The rest of the people might not have. Apologies for that. Just a little bit of silence.
Man.
But so
All
let
right.
me just
We need a
repeat.
producer. We need a
Yes.
producer.
Let me just repeat this thing. Span of Tether's audit comments over the years. 1, we will get an audit. 2, we'll get an audit soon. 3, we'll get an audit without waiting for a big 4 firm. 4, none of our competitors are audited. 5, we can't get audited now because no big 4 firm will audit a stablecoin. 6, ignore a lack of audit because none of our competitors are publishing regular audits. So it's been a little bit of a crazy progress on that whole thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
But yeah, so what do you think? Do you think there is a path, a realistic path to full audit for Tether? Do you think that's ever going to happen, or are they just good? Do you think they're going to dodge and deal with the consequences of not being in here, or do you think they're
Yeah.
finally going to just be like, look, we're going to do the ugly work to get our ship ready or to get our house in order and actually get an audit and become legit? Which of those two things do you think they're going to do?
Uh well, I think there's a third option that maybe wasn't there. Maybe it is represented. Correct me if I'm wrong. Um I think they couldn't do an audit if they wanted to right now. I think the history and the records and the record keeping and the various banks involved in the early days and the shuttering of some of those banks and the movings and the even the political engagements that have happened, I think, to those banks since then, it's like they don't know where the money came from necessarily, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's kind of the problem. And I think to some degree they know that, and they can't say that. They can't say that out loud. So I think they're going to need some kind of government intervention to bless them and accept them, because they have. I think their strategy is to get to that too big to fail place,
Which
and I think
they
that's why they're
arguably are
continuing
there.
to. Yeah, they're continuing to like weave their tentacles into as many institutions and governments as they can.
Yeah, and I don't think they're big enough though. I don't think they ever will be. Like I think that it's kind of like Binance. Like Binance is just giant, but then their sins, I guess, cost them big time. You know, CZ just got out of prison. Oh,
Oh, did he?
yeah,
Okay.
just recently, like last
I've been
week.
heads down, so I missed a lot.
Yeah, jacked. No, just kidding. He's not jacked. Um, there's been
Before Ross, even before. Well, okay. FTX is or God, who's the FTX guy? I forget his name.
SBF.
SBF. Yeah, he's
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 partying
still
with
in,
Diddy
right?
now. Yeah,
Okay.
Diddy is supposedly
Oh,
going to
that's right. Sure.
the same
Is,
prison
is
as
that? I
his.
thought that was a joke. Is that for real? He's actually sharing a cell.
I don't know about sharing a
He
cell,
did it.
but I think they're in the same
Same
general
prison.
environment. Yeah,
Oh my God. Okay.
but that's
Wow.
that's pretty wild. But the funny thing is, so Binance suffered. It's still the big elephant in the room, but the fines they had to pay, the other things like because of all the weird accounting stuff they did, all the stuff that's not like legit and kosher. They had to become like we're compliant in the modern era. We're like a real exchange. They had to clean a lot of house, and I do think that Tether could as well, but I think that they just become the less trustworthy, less streamlined USDC at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just going to become a victim of Gresham's law. It's going to be slightly better than dollars, but maybe slightly worse than USDC, and certainly not as good as BTC.
And I think there's a lot of like precedents for Tether doing a lot of shady things that aren't just, oh, well, our fiat banking, our fiat backing is not quite the way it was. Oh, we did some weird accounting stuff. But I think there's a lot of heavier sins, such as the whole like Bitfinex connection, all the connection with you having BTC reserves and printing Tether to pump the BTC and all this other stuff
That's
that it's just like you can't. The only way you get around that maybe is push that far enough in the back and then just be like, hey, it's just like we only need 7 years of statements or whatever it is. And
yeah.
I think that's the only way. Like, for example, as a bankruptcy lawyer I used to work with, he used to prefer to, because there's only like 6 months of bank statements required for bankruptcy. And he'd just be like,
Okay.
look, based on the where you are now, you're going to lose a lot of stuff if you file today. Maybe you should file in 6 months, you know? And then all of a
Right.
sudden, the stuff that you have to account for is different 6 months.
Yeah.
It's so, yeah, it could be one of those types of things where like Tether is going to just sort of play this dance while they're like, they see it on the horizon that they're not going to survive in the developed world unless they get their shit together. And they're like, look, well, our shit's not together. Give us a few years. Let's just start to slowly put all this in the back so that by the time we say, hey, guess what? We're ready to be audited. Then they go back in the statements enough and it looks good enough that they pass. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a reasonable path that they could go down. I think one of the arguments that Tether could make, thinking in defense of them as an institution, however much they may have inflated Bitcoin or inflated the crypto market with their, mythical, magical accounting practices and issuances, I think the ETFs and the banks that claim to be holding BTC but are not, fraudulent holdings, are going to deflate the value of Bitcoin to a similar degree. People will think that money's going into BTC and it won't. And whereas previously money was going into BTC that didn't. So maybe in some way it'll weigh out, but I think the downward pressure of the ETFs is going to be way more than the inflationary pressure of Tether. So maybe that's a negotiating point that they could use with the international and U.S. banking institutions to basically, give them a pass, I think. Because they could point the finger at all these upcoming BlackRock style ETFs. Is it BlackRock? There's Black something there's Blackstone. Somebody's doing ETFs, right? Who got the ETF approval? So yeah, I guess I'm just thinking of it from a macro perspective, but pointing at the institution of Tether, how they could survive and what arguments they could make. That seems like a pretty reasonable step that they could take. And then they could point at the sovereign nations and somehow gain equal footing with, the dollars and the pesos of the world.
Yeah. I mean, I think it could be just like a Tron style thing because Tron has been like the weird knockoff network for a while. And they've, I would say, largely failed to become a serious like ETH competitor or a Solana competitor, one of those things on that official level. But what
Okay.
they've
You don't think
succeeded,
they have momentum in that direction still?
not in that vibe,
Okay.
but where they've pivoted is they pivoted to actual like users and usage, especially in the developing world, where like Tether is like Tron is like the biggest Tether vehicle out there as far as like volume, how many people are serving, et cetera, et cetera. And so they've kind of like really marketed themselves in a way where they've been super useful to the developing world and all the kind of the more sketchy type things, but like they've sold to it heavily and very successfully. And I think that maybe Tether's kind of path is just to like be in the Wild West areas of crypto. There's a big thing that I think Tether itself might be taking for granted is the support from the crypto community. They have massive amount of financial support, and there's a lot of people like the conversations. Like I've used Tether this year. I've had
Hmm.
conversations with Tether this year for business purposes, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
The whole crypto community does this. And I would say among people who are invested in propping up Tether's success and or at least continued functioning, 80% of that acknowledges they're probably sketchy and a little scammy, which is
Yeah.
crazy that you have like your entire supporter base basically being like, we need you for now kind of thing. The
Well,
problem
that's
is
kind of
that
what I
that
was.
turns on a dime though. That could
It
change.
does. It does. But the thing is, it's like that's what I'm kind of saying about is pervasive across international banking and just to a slightly lesser degree, American banking. Like it's just that's par for the course. That's just how they
Hmm.
measure each other. So they're going to get a pass, I think, of some kind. It's just got to be a coordinated pass. And I think Tether's just got to bend the knee, to
Yeah.
whoever is actually in control and maybe also has other puppet strings in various things.
Yeah. The thing is, Tether was the bank for crypto before any banks dealt with crypto, i.e.,
Yeah.
all of crypto's existence up until right
Yeah.
freaking now, kind of.
And that's the
It's
point that I really want to make is that like they're serving a purpose at the very most fundamental value. All value is belief, right?
hmm
Look, I was able to move the money from here to there. It worked. It did the job. I'm not going to hold it, you know?
yeah,
I'm not going to hold it. That's Gresham's law, right? There's all kinds of forces at play within the context of an individual transaction, whether it's nefarious or not. A transaction still behaves the same, and that's the math that we can count on, and it's serving the purpose of moving it from A to B in a predictable way,
yeah, and like Tether and Binance are kind of the same thing in that they're both the mass onboarding tool as well as the bank for crypto for all these years when we didn't have it. And a lot of people just put up with sketchy shit because they're like, this is all we got. We need them to survive.
Yeah,
And
exactly. I remember
net,
trading on Poloniex. I'm like, I got to use USDT. I would prefer not to, but what else am I going to do?
yeah. And now the difference though is now, especially if you have an election that goes a certain way in the U.S., but even if not, things are becoming more legit. And I think that at some point, just like the Toy Story meme, I don't want to play with you anymore. I think that at some point, the baggage of Tether might become too heavy for because crypto's always been a lot of sketchy people, just clear, and a
Yeah.
lot of like visionaries and dreamers who just put up with the sketchy people because you kind of need them. And at some
Yeah.
point, Tether has like 70% support of like the builders and stuff. And then
Hmm.
like the other 30% is like the hardcore sketchy people who are just never going to leave them because they have no options. And at
Yeah.
some
But
point though, the 70% might view it be like, look, we can switch to USDC now or something
right.
like that. And then all of a sudden they're just like, look, we're not dealing with your lack of audits, we're not dealing with any of this stuff. We don't want to play with you anymore. We're
Yeah.
moving on, and then their market share could just get decimated and still be very strong in the sketchy areas
Yeah.
or in the developing world or the non-US world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
just
They just go
migrate
and
there.
serve the unbanked. The
Yeah.
unbanked now are living on USDT, and they don't. As shitty as it is, it's just that's the closest thing that's available. Uh, and you're not wrong. But the cool thing about this is it is not without historical precedence. This kind of like if you look, I think it was in the late 1800s, the free banking era of the United States. They had banks issuing currency, right? And it was kind of loosely coordinated effort, but each bank was responsible for essentially their own reserves. And it was, it wasn't regulated in that way. This is pre-regulation. And I'm not advocating for it, but it was a market and people learned to trust some institutions and not others. And that's just how the
As they
market works.
should.
Yeah. And that's just how the market works. And that I think is the key here, trust. I think Coinbase is trying. I think Brian wants to earn the trust of not only the American people but the world, by saying,
Hmm.
"Hey, we did it. We went through the ringer. We came out on top, and we've done all these good things to onboard humanity onto crypto." I think there is, kind of a high-minded mission there, even if they don't have the hardened meritocratic free market like completely baked in. I think they are aligned with government in a lot of ways, and there's a bit of a revolving door there, which can add some droplets of fascism into that whole relationship. So I'm concerned about that. But that doesn't alleviate the concerns that Tether has as a nefariously founded, almost mafioso style, ill-gotten gains casino of value. you know?
Yeah, it's definitely Tether is the canary in the coal mine.
Yeah.
Where as long as they're there doing their thing, we're still early. And I do think that at some point when Tether loses legitimacy, where it doesn't really have legitimacy, but it has lack of illegitimacy, if you know what I mean. Just kind of like, well, we'll just not talk about that.
Yeah, yeah,
Once
yeah.
it
And that's why I
loses,
think they need the blessing of
yes,
the bigger people.
once it loses legitimacy, which I don't think it's going to go legit. I think it's going the other way. That's just
Okay.
my
That's your
prediction.
that's your bet. Okay.
I don't
Yeah, I
know.
get it.
It could go either way. But when that happens is when you have the real split between a practical sense, real fork between the centralized CBDC style stablecoins and actual decentralized stablecoins. Because Tether is the placeholder for a decentralized stablecoin today, even though it's not. And
Hmm.
as soon as things get too hot for them and they can't do that, then you're going to see like whatever Luna 2.0 or whatever it is. A lot of all of a sudden, a bunch of people are going to start talking about it. A bunch of like, you know, Brian Armstrong types are going to start, maybe not him, but like those types are going to all of a sudden start saying, oh, decentralized, algorithmic this. And like, where did that come from all of a sudden? Oh, right, Tether. Tether's like, the last hurrah of like the, decentralized placeholder, but it's not decentralized.
So I'm trying to think of like the worst possible thing that I think could happen out of this.
Oh gosh, there's so many. There's so many.
One of the things that I just came up with just now as you were talking was somebody at Tether makes a relationship or has or leverages a relationship with XRP. And XRP and Tether somehow negotiate with these controllers who represent the international and US banks and ask for the blessing and then the knee simultaneously. Then they get legitimized and the WEF promotes them. And maybe they merge with WorldCoin, like that's that's what I think.
That'll be weird.
Um, but I mean, that I think that's essentially what they. Well, see, the pattern I'm looking at here is that the in order to survive, that they eat each other. They just
Yeah,
get bigger to cover up more bullshit, and eventually they collapse colossally.
that could
Um,
happen.
so that's I mean, I don't know what's the market share of XRP. It's in the multi billions also, right?
Yeah, and they're kind of trying to find their place still.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, there's so many avid believers in XRP who are, I would say, I mean, the caricature of the average XRP supporter is like, tech bro loves accounting and crypto,
Mm,
and believes for some reason, but has yet had no exposure to anything like
real.
meritocratic or freedom related, right?
Yeah.
So they think that it's better than Bitcoin, for various reasons. Most especially because it doesn't eat too much electricity,
It's
which
wild.
the XRP and Tether share, right? So they could jump on that, please all the climate sensitive WEF conditioned people of the world, and I think very easily, in my opinion, receive the blessing of 40% of the planet,
Mm.
or the banked planet, that is.
How good are you to filibuster during a bathroom break?
I can give it a go. It'd be a first shot. I can
Yeah,
rant
but
about some things.
why don't you rant about XRP? Because well, let me just set the stage for XRP because
Yeah.
Ripple, in my opinion, has kind of been positioning itself to be that sort of like CBDC rail. That kind of like we're the regulated crypto, but they
Yeah.
did it way too early and did the same kinds of sins Tether did, and now they're just in constant legal battles and stuff. They're a little bit behind technologically, but also they're in all these crazy legal battles for being sketchy when their entire thing was we're going to be the regulated one that the banks are going to use us, all this kind of stuff. And they're kind of, in my opinion, sort of lost that bet so far and just have a bunch of bag holders that are still hanging on trying to hope that's going to happen. And now they're just trying to find whatever they can to like pivot to still be like that. So I don't know. Let the folks know what you think. I'll be still listening.
Awesome. So XRP is I when I first came across XRP, I was not happy with it. I saw that how they were blessed. It seemed they were in cahoots with government and JP Morgan specifically. I remember reading and seeing some things on that, relationships at the very top. There was some funding that came from those places. Um, uh, and it seems some relationships in with the SEC. Like it's like the XRP was able to talk to the SEC in a way that was very much different, for instance, than like Dash. And when I was at Dash Core Group, when I was an employee of Dash Core Group, working as the head of UI UX, it was like they would say one thing to Ryan Taylor that he would recommunicate some of those things, they being the SEC, and then say something different to XRP, or at least that's what was seemingly being reported. So it was like Dash and XRP were receiving different messages, and it was depending on when and who you talk to, whether it was positive or negative, supportive or destructive. But Ripple in particular, you know, I just for Ripple for me is like Microsoft. I never want to touch it. I have used it. I'm on it right now, but I still hold probably like $150 of Ripple. So I'm like, but I don't want to buy anymore, and I don't know anybody that uses it in the crypto space. I know that people that advocate for it, but they may have been early buyers, because there was a time where you could get it pretty cheap, and then it came up to 25 cents, and it was a really big deal. And I don't know what it's at now, if it got over $1 at one point, but there were many thousandaires and millionaires made off of small investments that I had heard of and was aware of. But in any case, I just there is no ethos. There is no freedom ethos. There is no meritocracy ethos. There is no proof of work. It's all top-down control. It's just the same old hierarchy in a new outfit when it comes to Ripple and banking and the relationships with the government and the SEC. Yeah, the SEC, I think, is kind of playing the game of trying to tell them. Didn't they say? Yeah, it's they declared it a what do you call it? Asset share. What the word? It failed the Howey test according to them. It's a security. That's it. Security. So yeah, they said it was a security, and I remember, and I could be completely wrong about this, but this was years ago. I feel like there was very soon after that SEC battle that initially sparked with XRP, some government employees either came straight from the SEC or somewhere in Treasury, some government people were hired by XRP. And then all of a sudden, all that noise about the SEC just kind of went away. And like the overreach started calming down. And I think that I was paying attention because it was around that time when I was with Dash, and I was just kind of blown away. I'm like, what's going on here? Like, you got sweetheart deals like happening before our eyes, and nobody wants to like call it out. I mean, I don't know how it could have gotten called out, and most
Of
people are so
course.
distracted and just trying to survive through the past several years of bullshit that this is this is the last thing on most people's minds. But these are the kinds of things that I think are setting up for, I think, the downfall of the dollar. When the dollar when the dollar falls, this is the kind of thing that we're going to have left. These agency slash crypto bro fascist relationships that are going to pick up the pieces of these institutions and try to reinstantiate them in their little fiefdoms, And I think Ripple's going to be one of them. I think Tether's going to be one of them. I think USDC is going to be one of them. I think the whole financial market, and this is getting way off into the, tinfoil hat stuff, but
Way off into the
there,
corned beef.
yeah. But there is a story that is on the internet about how the world was divided up into like 12 nations, and banks were assigned essentially to each of these nations, and those are the families that control everything. There's like one bank, 12 banks, and then one, I think, to rule them all, is kind of how it was divided up from a financial perspective. My theory is that what we're seeing with these relationships and banking is kind of a splintering and a land grab, both literally and conceptually in the mind space of value. Banking all the dollars and the gold and the silver and the paper money of all the world. Like, I think it's just going to splinter. It's going to fracture and splinter as the house of cards falls. It's not going to be completely without value, but there is going to be a jubilee of some kind. I think between now and 2030, as influenced by the fourth turning and several other, Ray Dalio, many people have talked about these kinds of things. Like, it's almost long overdue at this point. But I think this is how it comes about. This is how it unfolds, is these smaller institutions who are up and coming and doing everything they can to survive in a corrupt sewage system. And therefore they don't come out uncorrupt on the other side, but they will come out with some diminished version of value. And I think XRP is going to be one of them. I think Tether is going to be one of them. I think all CDBCs, when they are created, they will have some of that, but they're only going to be as good as the sovereign nations from which they are, or to which they are tied, right? So if America breaks apart, those CDBCs are going to go with it, right? Gresham's law all over again in degrees. And that's one thing. Another thing that I think Americans don't have an experience of, especially, they don't deal with multiple currencies most of the time. So we think in dollars, and it takes a while. It takes, I think, some period of time, couple years probably, to shift out of thinking in one unit of account to other or more, or maybe even different kinds of units of account. If you listen to Chris Williamson's Modern Wisdom podcast, he has new metrics that he's developing, such as number of hours in a hammock each year, right? Like, these are ways to value things. These are units of account that I think that are going to come up more and more as the meaning economy grows and the material and consumer economy dies. What we're seeing as these are the pillars of the consumer and material economy: the dollar, sovereign debt, gold, silver, SEC, Ripple, securities, equities, all that stuff, bonds, all the stuff that we account for. Crypto is getting in there, but crypto is going to be like, I think, like a doorknob. It's going to stratify all of the existing sources of value. It's going to replace paper assets with digital assets. I mean, that's
Yeah.
just
It seems to
obvious
be kind
core.
of funny how there's like a competition to see who's going to be the new system to do this. And
Right.
it is kind of funny to see how people, what like again the XRP sort of value proposition of being like the regulated bank used platform. I think they struggled because of technological reasons, but also those regulatory reasons. But it's kind of interesting because let me throw this thing up on the screen that I saw the other day that unfortunately I didn't send over to you. But oops, what's his name? Adriano Feria, who's this ETH guy, said Coinbase, Sony, and Samsung have launched their own Ethereum L2s. Visa, MasterCard, Robinhood, Meta, Microsoft, Amazon, Apple, Google, and many other industry leaders will eventually launch their own L2s as well. This is brace for the Cope volcano when that happens. But the kind of interesting point is, first of all, it seems like in a twist, Ethereum, which is supposed to be this like world computer, decentralized, whatever, is kind of becoming, it's kind of fulfilling XRP's dreams, which is a little bit of a, in my opinion, a letdown from the ETH world that like it should be a sovereign platform, not a platform for non-sovereign things. But also, it's like XRP, I think especially a lot of investors bought into the line that this is going to be, that we're investing in eventual regulatory capture of crypto. And it turns out to be have come at it from a different angle. But also, as far as I read some headlines somewhere that XRP is exploring or they're working hard on getting EVM compatibility onto the network this year or early next year rather.
Yeah, this is a signal that we need to be looking for. Is,
yes,
interoperability.
And they kind of, it seems almost like a capitulation from Ripple that they're like, oh shit, we kind of like, we were too far ahead of the game. There wasn't a market for what we wanted. The tech has left us behind while we've been trying to cover up our sins of the past of like printing 1 million tokens and saying, no, it wasn't us. And then the SEC battles and stuff. And now they're seeing the ETH is sort of like eating their lunch. And they're like, look, we got to like recalibrate and re-chase after what ETH has got going on. And I have to say, like, ETH as a platform or EVM seems to be far and away the victor as far as like what all the stuff that's important to the near future, at least, is being built on. So It's kind of interesting to see that happen.
Yeah, I have a theory on why.
Why don't we wrap up talking about that one then?
Yeah, so I think it's a good strategy that ETH did. Solidity is a very JavaScript-like language. You know, it's object oriented, it's familiar, it's comfortable. If you're coming from, you know, Node.js, JavaScript, React, like it's a huge market of people. Even if you're a Python developer or really any OOP language, you can jump into Solidity pretty comfortably, and 2-3 weeks up and running. If you're an experienced developer, you're good to go. And that created the and that plus the hackathons, like, I mean, ETH became the darling of geeks, and I think that's essentially why. That's a strategy. If you're occupying a domain, you want to be the darling of the residents of that domain. You want to be revered and protected by the residents of that domain. And if we're talking about the crypto space, it's kind of hard to be a Bitcoin developer. It's admirable, but I mean, C is almost, it's difficult to approach. Now, there have been many ports, right? I think there's a port for almost every language now, Java, JavaScript on Node of Bitcoin, and so on and so forth. So you can code, but you still have to do the backporting if there's updates to the main code base, and that can be painful. I think it's incredible that Dash continues to maintain their connection to Bitcoin because developers who can do that are just so rare, relatively speaking, compared to ETH. That domain. So the domain of let's say young and up and coming programmers who don't have old school skills. It's a very particular kind of skill set. ETH is just the way to go. They're owning the creative domain of young app developers. I think that's really the ticket. That
Mm.
and the market and the conferences and the locations and the themes and all that stuff. They're really catering to the Vitalik Buterins of the world.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of it's gonna be interesting to see how the whole space shakes out. It's very much like a who can compete to be the best platform for things that people are trying to do. And
And,
there's just so many, like it seems like everything's sort of like melding together. Everything was so siloed before. Now it's
mhm.
like, what's the best stablecoin? Which stablecoin on which network? People don't even seem to care that much anymore. And it's going to be interesting. At some point, all that complexity might be too much, but at this point, you sort of are seeing things going in that direction.
Right. But this interoperability, I read this book. I wish I can't remember the name of it, but I think the subtitle is "The Forces That Will Shape the Future." It was like a futurist book about how the technology that shape our future, the technological forces that shape our future, and one of them, I believe, was interoperability. I may have even brought this up. I'm having deja vu on one of the podcasts before, but I'm going to go reread it. I think within the next few months, because we're starting to see some of those signals now. 5 years after I read that book, and I think I want to kind of gauge based on these data points how long it's going to be before we see, I don't know, I guess mass adoption of crypto. And I think mass adoption of crypto today means something very different than it meant 5 years ago, 8 years ago. It's
Hmm.
I think we used to think that it back in the day, we thought that meant, okay, everybody switches, all the little devices in the world are now just crypto compatible or whatever, like we can do it right there at the point of sale. But maybe it's something less visible. It's something less obtrusive. Maybe crypto inserts itself behind the scenes. Um, and I think that there's room for that. Um, and I think deals like, well, or institutions like Ripple and Tether, they're the ones who are going to kind of enable that when they get the blessing of the Visas and the Mastercards of the world, because they've got the distributed networks already on the ground. The last mile is very expensive. These crypto companies aren't going to do that. All these other organizations, they've been doing that, and they have multi-tiered packages and programs and people and salespersons and support staff and all these things at these very granular levels, helping mom and pop process credit cards. Right? We don't have that for crypto. We don't have that equivalent. And you wanted to be that guy. I wanted to be that guy. We wanted to be those people who were, hey, here's a new way, here's an opportunity, here's an option. I think people it's people don't trust it unless it's comes with the glitz and the zang now. So it's got to be marketed and wrapped up, and to do that, it's got to be tied with some corrupt institution. It's got to come with a brand name on it, and that's where we come straight back to Google and everybody issuing their own and inserting themselves basically behind that last mile. I think that's what they're going to do. They're going to deal with these business owners one-on-one, and then they're going to create tools for them to onboard themselves with their existing technology. We've got the Micros API plugin right here, and you can connect with your Amazon dollars. Boom, done.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely I think going to be the more near term way things go.
Yeah.
Um, it's kind of like a 50-50 when you see like PayPal getting into crypto, right? Like through
Hmm. Hmm.
stablecoin and like Visa and everyone doing that 50-50, meaning 50% of it is this is just the way things are going to go. The same meet the old boss, same as the new boss,
Hmm.
right? Or however that goes. Um, the old players are coming in and just taking their share.
Hmm.
There's a big chunk of that. There's also a chunk of that is the old players are seeing the writing on the wall and are trying to get at whatever they can in the new world, knowing that it's not going to be the same size of a piece that they had in the old world. Where
Right.
it's like before, like, so like just for example, PayPal is a good example where PayPal and Venmo and stuff were kind of like banking. Like they're kind of intermediaries in that or the kind of interim steps to crypto, in that they're these apps that let people pay for stuff that kind of like they aren't the card companies, that aren't the banks, but they kind of like are almost that still, but they're kind of like a little bit of a move. And I think that like as the banks had to give up market share to these kinds of things, now those same players are also gonna have to give up market share to like crypto apps, straight up crypto apps, and they're trying to still have their piece of the pie. You're still gonna have cards with tap and pay that like connect to your MetaMask or whatever, and just sign and auto convert some stuff, some stable coins or whatever to like for your cards and stuff. But then there's gonna be people doing native crypto rails, just like Stripe, which is accepting, USDT and USDC, I believe, right now. And so you can like now pay online with, again, crypto, not crypto, but like kind of
Yeah, pseudo crypto.
on crypto rails though. That's the big thing.
Sure. Yeah.
And like Solana and stuff that works,
Right.
and ETH, which doesn't, but whatever. So I think that it's going to be interesting to see how that whole thing kind of shakes out. A lot of people have been a little bit too predictive, in my opinion, trying to guess which way the whole like mass adoption thing's going to turn out. Like, what's it going to look like? Let's just try to get there first. Like, instead of
Right.
like one step ahead, one step at a time, building into that and seeing where you go.
Yeah, to some degree, I can kind of respect that. Like skate to where the puck is going. Run to where the ball is thrown. I to some degree I'm doing that too. My thesis though is the meaning economy, and we should talk about that another time.
For sure. Yeah, well, this has been a great ramble. Sorry everyone for all the sound disruptions.
Man, I
It's not
apologize.
been entirely your thing. I did have myself muted for a little while I was rambling, so there was a little bit of that.
Like I said, we need a producer. I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
Let's be successful. We'll get some money. We'll do more of this with higher production quality, and maybe it'll be easier.
Yeah, maybe one of these days I'll get my setup all figured out. Yeah, and one of these days I won't be sick either, which is it's wild to think that like, tomorrow's like Saturday, right?
Mm-hmm.
2 Saturdays ago, I was at a crypto meetup, and then on the drive back, I'm just like, man, I feel like shit.
Oh man.
And it was like
Wow.
2 weeks ago, and it's just like, still, I kind of don't sound perfect, right?
Yeah.
And it's just like, like,
lost a chunk of your life.
yeah.
Sorry, man.
Gained a lot of thought though during that time, right?
Nice.
Sitting at home thinking about stuff, thinking about how, all the corned beef, all the usual stuff, all value is belief.
Indeed.
Yeah, is it chill o'clock now?
I pitched a little bit at the beginning. If you guys want to check out, you can create accounts at ludumvitae.com right now, ludumvitae.com. And it's nothing, basically. It's pre-alpha. And right now it's just kind of a list making tool, but we're going to integrate.
To people of alpha.
I mean, I hope so. There is no token associated with this. I'm not selling a token. I'm going to integrate with existing Well, I should take that back.
Not interested. No token.
You get your own tokens. They're worthless. Okay? I'm just saying that up front. You get tokens when you create an account, but they're worthless and they mean nothing until you inject value into them. So more on that in the future as the idea develops. So I hope to have an alpha before the end of the month. And then beta before the end of the year. The beta is what I'm going to really push and get user feedback on. Hopefully that will be billable. Maybe we'll get a little revenue off that. We'll see. And then Q1, Q2 next year, we'll hope to launch our MVP, which will be AI integrated meaning making, meaning mapping, alignment making, team oriented spheres of individuals or billions. And then
That's a
hopefully we'll be
quotable
changing
right
the world.
there. Yeah, that'll be fun. It's one of those things that I mentioned before. It's one of those. I don't know if hard to market is the right term, but it's one of those like very specific tools. That's like, it's like you don't go to the store for one of these things. It's not like, but at the same time, it's like nothing and everything, right?
Well, I figured it out this year. It was really hard. I think we're selling alignment. I
Hmm.
think that's what we're selling.
So like a tire
Uh,
shop. Just kidding.
Mental alignment. All right, within yourself and among teams.
Hmm.
That's what we're going to sell. Well, and with AI agents eventually also.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if it's like specifically just like alignment, but it's like you're flying blind without it kind of thing.
I think so. I think it's most people are unaware of how much time is wasted figuring out what you want to do. And we just want to make it easy for you to figure out what you should be doing with yourself and with other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if we can do this right, if we can help people spend 5 minutes instead of 5 days figuring out the next action with themselves and their teams, I think teams are just whoever does it is they're going to be the best in their domain. You know, it's and I will help you. I will help you do your business in the most efficient manner possible. One of the beautiful things I hope comes from this is the 3 hour workday,
Hmm.
because you'll get 8 hours of productivity out of 3 hours. That's I think that's one of the metrics I'm aiming at.
Damn. Well,
Yeah.
maybe a good tagline for this would be "Fire your life coach."
No, maybe rehire, because life coaches are going to be like a really critical part of our target market. I think they're gonna help us like reach audiences because they'll use it to build their programs, and then their programs will be resaleable, and people can see the results of their own successes and other people's successes, and then their successes become marketable. They can resell them. So there's like a follow-on effect there. But that's the big dream. I may be giving away too much.
Yeah.
Um, it's not that right now. It's just a list maker. It's just a glorified list maker, and we're going to make it fun and gamified with tokens that are
Yeah.
worthless. SEC, just for your record,
Yeah.
and FBI.
Gary Gensler's entered the chat. This is no good. All right. Well, thanks for the show. Um, thanks everyone for watching. Thanks for putting up with this. I didn't want to go yet another week without exposing my croaky frog-like tones. And yeah, thanks for being on, Chuck. Happy Chuck Day. I
Thanks,
put a
man.
party hat on the thumbnail. I didn't. You didn't have it in real life, but
I
whatever.
did not. No, sorry. It is. Yeah. Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. It's good.
Thank,
This is a good treat for me.
yeah, absolutely. And some interesting stuff coming up for next week. That's all I could say. Some good shows.
Nice.
So, yeah. Thanks for being on, everyone. Enjoy your weekend. If you're dying of a mysterious illness, get them to give you all the freaking steroids and antibiotics they got, and you'll get over it. Personal advice. All right. Have a good one, guys. Bye bye.